Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well. This lecture video is going to talk about annotated bibliographies, which we are working on. An annotated bibliography is basically a piece of writing that talks about sources you're finding in your research for a different project that you're working on, or just something that you're wanting to research and investigate. So I am going to, in this video, talk about some characteristics of annotated bibliographies and also give you a demo for how to write, some writing strategies for approaching an annotated bibliography. So to get started here, I'm going to share my screen and you should be able to see a short PowerPoint here just introducing annotated bibliographies. So what is an annotated bibliography? Well, annotated bibliographies are very traditional types of assignments. You may have done one previously, or you might be assigned one in another class, because they are a way to process and present information from research. They can operate as standalone assignments all by themselves, or they can be part of a set of research assignments, and they're very formal. So they are going to be formal presentations of the scholarship or the source material that you've been able to find about something that you are researching. Okay, so in an annotated bibliography, when you write about your sources, it's not like a traditional essay where you're going to be folding in these sources and talking about them within the same section. You're going to talk about each source separately. And for each of the sources, whether that's an article, whatever kind of source that you're looking at, for each one, you're going to give the citation of that source. In this case, we're going to use MLA for this. So MLA style citation, that's going to include things like the author name, the title, the place of publication. So it's more than the URL address of the source. Just keep that in mind. The full MLA citation of the source is going to go in your annotated bibliography. After that, you write a summary of the source, where you basically summarize the major points that are made in that source. And then you go to an evaluation of the source next. Your evaluation is going to be discussing things that you appreciate about that source, its strengths and limitations. Like, for example, a limit of the research might possibly be that it had a really small sample size for the study that was conducted, for example. And also, you're going to be able to apply this source to a research project if you're using it for a research project, and talk about how you're going to be able to use this source in the future when you work on that research paper or project. So we write annotated bibliographies to help you process research, evaluate the quality of your sources, and plan for their use in future papers or projects. Because when we are writing, we are also thinking at the same time, right? When we write, we process information, we think about this information. So completing an annotated bibliography helps us to pay attention and focus on the sources that we're using for our research, investigate those sources, and talk about what is going to be useful or what we are gaining from doing the research and the education in this topic. So next, what I want to do, I know that was super quick there, but I want to give you a demonstration as well of an annotated bibliography. And along the way, I'm going to talk about writing strategies for this annotated bibliography. The one that you're going to see is one that I wrote, and it is longer than the one that you're going to be writing. You will see a sample annotated bibliography as well. So you can kind of, it'll be posted or given to you. And this is going to be another sample for you to look at. The sample that I'm about to show on the screen is color coded. This is just for demo purposes. Your document does not need to be, and it will not be color coded. Okay, so without further ado, let me show you this annotated bibliography here, talk about some of its features. So an annotated bibliography starts with, or is going to start with, your heading for your style. In this case, we're using MLA on the screen here. So you've got your name, the professor name, the class, and then the date. You'll see last name and page number up on the top right. The title of your annotated bibliography is going to be your research topic, colon, annotated bibliography. In this case, for the demo annotated bibliography, the demo was about Reinhold Niebuhr and Joseph Conrad, and this is completely different than your topic will be, but this is just your demonstration here. Okay, so we're just going to glance at the formatting here really quick, and then I'm going to get into how to write those elements that you're going to write, the summary and the evaluation. So notice that I've got my title here, and I have at that point the MLA citation of this very first source. The author's name is Hunt Hawkins. This is going to be the title, the name of the journal that it was published in, volume and issue number, the date, the page numbers, and then this is the database JSTOR that it was found in. Now it may have a DOI number by now, which I would add to my citation if I was doing it now. Again, this one was written in the past, so there may not be a DOI number, or there wasn't in the past. So I have a date of access instead. Remember that if you're researching in the Lone Star databases, they will usually give you the MLA citation, and you just need to find where to click for your citation and make sure you choose the MLA style if you're using MLA style. But it will generate this for you so that you don't have to make the citation yourself. It's really important when you write an annotated bibliography to pay attention to how many people wrote a particular article. In this case, there's only one author, Hunt Hawkins, so that's very simple. But sometimes you're going to see where there are two authors, three or more authors. Three or more authors will be signified by something called the et al. This is ET space AL period, and it means that three or more people wrote that particular source. When you see that in MLA, that is MLA's shorthand to tell you that three or more people wrote on that article, or wrote and worked on that article, which means that when you write about the article, you need to always represent the fact that there was a group. So you'll be using plural situations there, plural pronouns, and you're going to use, plural verbs as well. Okay, so if we're looking at this, notice that I've got two paragraphs here. These are in single space, because you've got a paragraph here. This is the paragraph of summary. And then we've got a paragraph of evaluation. I'm going to talk about what these colors mean here in just a second. And then I go on to the next source at the top of the next page. So every source is going to appear on its own page. You're going to see the same thing happen again, where you have a citation, a summary, and an evaluation. And then you're going to see that there's a continuation to the next source. There is no works cited at the end of an annotated bibliography, because you're giving, or our annotated bibs, because we are giving the citation along the way. So we don't need a works cited page at the end. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about some writing strategies here. We're going to look at how to write an effective academic summary. Now, remember that the annotated bibliography is super formal. So that means that I'm talking about traditional rules here, and creating something that, even though it's a very formal document, it's hopefully not going to be a really dry summary. It's going to be a stronger summary that has more of a flow to it and gives the right information. So a summary is main ideas only, and you're going to go chronologically through the article. What are the main ideas in this article? When you present this summary, in order to write a strong academic summary, I'm wanting you to use the author name as often as you can. So almost every sentence, you will say either the author, or you'll say the author's name. And this is going to make sure that it always sounds like you're summarizing the work of somebody else, and not writing about the topic yourself and giving your own ideas about the topic. And by the way, the annotated bibliography is not a place where we're going to discuss the topic ourselves and our own ideas about this. The annotated bibliography is designed to present the research that's been done from other people that you have found as part of your research process. Okay, so if we're looking at this, the green represents the author's last name. So just notice how often I'm using the author name. And also notice that when I use the author name, I am trying to provide some variety in where the name appears in the sentence. So sometimes it's going to be after a short phrase, like according to Hunt Hawkins. Sometimes it's going to, or to prove his claim, Hawkins begins by doing this. Notice that, sometimes it's later on in the sentence, like in this one, it's almost at the end. These 4 critics, Jonah Raskin, Eloise Naphay, Abram Fleischman, and Robert F. Lee, each offer a new interpretation of Conrad's comment on colonialism, and Hawkins provides a fifth. Notice that sometimes I'm just starting the sentence with Hawkins, but not every time, right? So as you're writing the summary, I really want you to try for variety in where you place the author name. And that's also going to help with sentence variety too, which we want to strive for in our work anyway. So author name used often, and variety in the placement of the name in the sentence. The blue that you see represented here are verbs. And so notice that they're academic verbs, they are active, and they're in present tense. MLA style uses present tense verbs for what authors in literature has done. So instead of, Hawkins argued, past tense, I'm going to say Hawkins argues. Or instead of Hawkins provided, I'm going to say Hawkins provides. So a couple of things about these verbs in blue. Notice that I'm not repeating the verb. There's no repetition of a verb. They're all different. They all mean different things. So if Hawkins is discussing or explaining something, that's different than analyzing something or asserting or making a claim, or arguing something. If he's just providing information, that's different than, than questioning something, for example. So what is the author doing right there in that part of the article? Use a verb that goes with what the author is doing, whether they're just explaining something, whether they're making an argument, but what are they doing? And try for this level of variety in your verbs. This is just some of the list. So you can actually search online for critically minded or academic verbs to get a sense of some more of your options. But instead of just saying something like says repeatedly, try to use specific present tense academic verbs in your summaries here. That is going to strengthen your work. Okay, so the red that's in here, as you may already know or can tell, the red are transition signal words that just show that I'm going from point to point. So things like in order to do this, or after, or then. They're not widely used because you don't need them that much in a short summary, but sometimes they help the reader go from point to point, and you can help them follow along by using a small transition word in here in the summary paragraph. So those are the colors of the summary. In other things to think about with the summary are that it is just main points. So if you're looking at a fact like 57% or something like that, that's probably not a main point unless it is the major result of a study. So think about what you're writing in the summary and go for main points. When you're looking at a source, or you're listening to a presentation, or you're looking at an article, for example, one trick is to find whether there are breaks in that presentation or subheadings in an article, because you can look and see what's the major point of this section, and then what's the major point of the next section. Major points can be found anywhere really, but they're most often found in either subheading titles or the first sentences of sections, the first or last sentences of sections. When you're looking at a study that's been done in the databases, for example, look at the results section. That's probably going to be where you're going to find most of the main points after they've given you specific data that they found. So look for a major discussion or major general points that are being made that you want to give in your summary. But this is going to be just a really nice summary of the article and what the article contained. Notice that this original article that I'm summarizing here ran from page 286 to 299. So, a pretty good size article, yet this is all that I am writing when I summarize it. And again, this is longer than the summary yours will need to be, and your summary will need to be. So if you have a longer article, you're probably going to have more main points versus a shorter article where you have less, or a shorter source where you have less to talk about. Another key to this, to making a strong annotated bibliography, is to have pretty much a balance between your summary and your evaluation. If you have more to summarize, you should have more to evaluate, and vice versa. So your summary paragraph should be about the same length as your evaluative paragraph. By the way, disclaimer, there are lots of ways to write annotated bibliographies. And one of the standard ways is that you put your summary and your evaluation together in the same section. We're not doing that though. We're going to split them apart. Some annotated bibliographies only give a summary, but we are going to give evaluation. So we're going to do it the way that you see it presented. And so if you see other forms of an AnnoBib online, just know that there are other forms out there. There are other ways to format it too, with the margins and the indenting. We're just going to use this way though, because we have to select one way to go together with our annotated bibliography. So this is the way that we're going to run with it. Okay, so the evaluation paragraph, once you've finished summarizing the source, and by the way, remember that you're going to go in order of the main points. They're definitely representing how the article is going to start. What are the main points in the middle? What is the conclusion at the end, or something similar? After that, you're going to go in and actually evaluate the article. This is where I get to see more of your critical thinking skills, because you're actually going to ground your discussion in specific examples from that article and talk about how those will be useful for you in your research project. Okay, so let's read through here, and I'm actually going to talk about what the colors represent as well. Okay, so Hawkins, through clear prose and extensive historical knowledge, sheds new light on Conrad's anti-imperialist treatise. He places himself within the context of several critics, though Hawkins could engage these critics further than his opening commentary allows. His article would also improve through the elimination of the final section, in which he discusses Conrad's view of French colonies. The section does not fit the study of imperialism in Heart of Darkness, which is a novella, by the way. If you have read that one, you'll recognize that. Okay, so I'm going to stop here and just talk about the opening colors and what they represent. Remember that your evaluation paragraph is going to be a combination of 3 elements, where you write about the strengths of that source, what you appreciate about it. That's element number 1. The weaknesses or limitations of the source, that's number 2. And then you're going to get to how it's going to be useful for you in your research project as number 3. Okay, so opening a section of this paragraph here, I'm starting out with the yellow, which are what I see as the strengths of the source. Clear prose, extensive historical knowledge, shedding new light on something, placing himself within the context of other critics. These are all things that I see as positive things about this source. I'm talking about these strengths in the yellow section here. Then I'm going to go into the blue. The blue is the color for the demo purpose here that I'm using to represent limitations or weaknesses of the article. I'm saying, you know what, when I evaluated, I think that the author could have engaged these other critics more. And so I think there should have been more of that. And basically, I'm thinking that the author should have taken out the final section of the article. I don't think that it was really helpful, and I think it probably shouldn't have been there. So that's my evaluation of the article. Notice that there's a pretty good balance between yellow and blue here. If you had a lot of blue or a lot of limitations and weaknesses, then the reader of your AnnoBib would wonder why you wanted to use that source in the first place, since you found so many problems with it, right? So we want to have more yellow than blue, or about the same amount of those two. Notice that this is a small part of the paragraph overall. The largest part of the paragraph is the purple. The purple for this demo represents how I'm going to be able to use this source in a research project that I'm going to do later. So Hawkins' article will aid my research through its historical analysis. An understanding of the favorable perception of imperialism during Conrad's time helps to explain elements of pro-colonization in the novella. Information regarding Leopold heightens both Conrad and Niebuhr's declaration of human corruption, because Leopold's damaging powers, recorded history. Hawkins also points out the harmful effects of colonialism on the minds of natives through his commentary regarding the helmsman's loss of restraint. Helmsman reacted to threat with confusion and impulse because of the fear instilled in him by the whites. The opening presentation of multiple critics' opinions also amplifies my understanding of Conrad's ambiguity and variety of legitimate readings available. Okay, so the purple in here, I am talking specifically about how I'm going to be able to use this article later when I write another paper that's going to be my research paper over the fictional novel Heart of Darkness, and applying that to Reinhold Niebuhr, who is an ethicist there. So I'm going to be writing a paper about that in the future. And right now I'm just planning. When I look at this source, Hunt Hawkins here, how am I going to be able to use that later in the research project that I'm working on? So in the purple, I am thinking through the gray. The gray is representing specific moments from Hawkins' article, specific examples of information. And the purple is how will I be able to use that? Why is that useful for me? How does it help to educate me on this topic of the book? And also, how am I going to be able to use it when I write my paper later? So this is a planning space for the reasons that this article or source is useful for you for your research project, and how exactly you're going to be able to use that. Why would this be important to know? How's this going to help you when you're researching this topic? So, and then again, of course, you see the red, the small transition words there. When you're writing the evaluation paragraph, the strongest evaluation paragraphs are going to be able to have some of this gray in here. In other words, they're going to specifically identify moments from that article or source and talk about why those moments are useful. So it's not really general. I'm not saying a lot of broad things. I'm not saying like, hey, there was a lot of great information and there were many different sections. I'm not saying things that I could say about any source, right? Or a lot of sources. I'm being very specific about what Hawkins presents and why will I be able to use that. So the more specific detail you can add here, the stronger your paragraph becomes. And although you must stay with main ideas only in the summary, in the purple or in the evaluation paragraph here, you're able to point out small details like percentages or facts, or smaller things that you appreciate that you think you're going to be able to use in the future. So you don't have to stay with main points only in this second paragraph here, the evaluation paragraph. So then what happens with the AnnoBib is basically you just do the exact same process again for the next source. So you're going to have, again, the summary, the citation, the summary, and the evaluation of the next source. And you're going to do that for each of the sources in the annotated bibliography. Okay, so that was a quick demonstration there, but I hope that shows you some of the writing characteristics and features, and basically how to write a strong academic summary and an evaluation of the source. Please look for more detail in the instructions that I've posted or that I've given to you about how we're going to be using annotated bibliography in conjunction with our own research in class. I hope this was helpful as we looked at the demo here. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out, and I look forward to seeing your work coming in pretty soon.